Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
But basically, but. So what? Well, continue. I'm so pleased that it may be slow. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, there's a lot. Ladies, we're live. Welcome to the 2023 council. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 21. I can confirm that all members of council are present.
We push the other. We'll start that from the top. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order at 12:20 or 2:21. And I can confirm that all members of council are present, including 2 via Zoom. I want to welcome everybody, and hopefully we're going to be able to move this fairly expeditiously. We've got a big agenda, but we'll get through it, I'm sure. Nobody is absent. I mentioned that already. I can also confirm that the CAO, the clerk, and other members of our senior management team are also present either here in the room or virtually as well. Allow me to read the land acknowledgement statement. We want to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations, and their stewardship throughout the ages is recognized. And I will follow that up with a public notice that today's meeting is being live streamed and it's being recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in this open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and your comments being recorded and posted online. We did ask for input on the agenda at TML public comment at muskokalakes.ca. We received no public comments. Would also acknowledge that there is a supplementary agenda, which I believe was posted sometime yesterday. I'll quickly summarize what it contains. First of all, pursuant to section 7.2.1 of the Council Procedure By-law 2019-079, the supplementary agenda was issued to add the following matters. Under 5E, Marie Poirier is to attend item 9.B.2, B/43/22/ML ZBA-48/22 Dunford. 5F, Allie Brown or a designate is going to attend item number 9.A.2 bylaw 2021-048 amps. And number 8M, report from the Director of Public Works the transfer of the Windermere Wharf Manager responsibilities. And generally related to that same issue under 9A5 bylaw 2023-046 to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute and affix the corporate seal to the agreement between the Township of Muskoka Lakes and Windermere House Muskoka Limited Partnership for the management of the Windermere Wharf and Maple Leaf Bay Dock for 3 one-year operating seasons commencing in 2023 and ending in 2025. So with that behind us, I'm going to ask the requisite question. Does anyone here on council have any disclosures to be made of pecuniary interest in any of the matters on the agenda? I am seeing none, so we'll make that as we'll record that. I will also point out we're still operating under rules that we developed a little while ago. Motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders, and that's just to expedite the process. And voting, all members shall physically raise their hand until I, the mayor, have confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk, but that vote is not to be considered a recorded vote. Okay, so the sorry, may I just we are sorry, as we're moving through moving into obviously the summer months, we can't forget that many constituents of ours, certainly on some parts of Lake Muskoka and other parts, are still suffering from unbelievably high water. I would like to just make sure that they realize that we are aware of the situation, that we are working as aggressively as we can with the Minister of Natural Resources and Forests and their staff to do what we can to not only report out on the matters as they develop, but hopefully to help make good decisions on a timely basis to get those matters sorted out. If anybody is watching and has not yet checked out the Township of Muskoka Lakes website, please do so, especially if you're interested in water levels. We do have what I believe to be an excellent page right on our face page. There's a link right on our face page that'll take you to the latest information from both the ministry and from the township about the water levels and the efforts that we're making to try to get that resolved as quickly as we can. Okay. Perfect. I'm going to move on. We're going to start with, I think this may be just changed up a little bit. We've got public comment. We have, I believe, 5. There are 2 that I mentioned earlier that came in and they're on the supplementary agenda. And there are 3 others. I'm going to just take them in the order they came in. Each, as I understand, gets 2 minutes. And I also believe that we're going to be using a slightly different way to time and alert you to the fact that your time is running. There will be a chime, I think you would call it, a rather abrupt one, at 1 minute and 30 seconds to let you know that you're on your last 30. And the next sound that you hear will be me chiming in about wrapping it up. So with no further ado, I'm going to call on Vlad Grech, please, regarding the Grech matter. See online. Perfect. Mr. Trgacheff, how are you doing? You're on mute still. There we go.
Hi.
We can hear you now. Can you tell me how to pronounce your last name? I would appreciate it.
Sure. It's Trgacheff.
Oh, thank you.
We were actually my lawyer, Joe Murray, was supposed to be speaking on my behalf. We've been waiting actually for quite a while for your previous meeting to stop. I spoke to him a little while ago. Joe, are you there?
Just check with our support here. Did we have another? What was his last name?
Murray.
Murray. Mr.
Joe
Murray
Murray.
is. All right. Might I suggest we move on with the rest of the delegations and we'll watch for his reappearance. He was on for a bit, but he's not there right now. Would you prefer that we do that rather than move on without his help?
Yes, let's move on. I'm going to give him a call to see what we can do about it.
Okay, that's good. Well, if you put yourself on mute and we'll park you and we'll, oh, Mr. Soya is here. Nope, he's gone again. Okay, if you want to just put yourself on mute and you can make the call and see if you can get him available and we will move on to Debbie Grech if she's there. We need to have Ms. Grech have your camera turned on. Let's see. Oh, there we are. And you are allowed, you've got a 2-minute allocation and we'll start the time now. I'm sorry. Oh, you're muted, Ms. Grech. There we go.
Hi there. I
Go
just
ahead.
joined in now, so I'm not sure what came before me. I just wanted to see if my agent Peter Hungerford is on the line.
Just 1 minute. We'll check on that. Mr. Hungerford, is he there? Yep, he's here right now. He's coming in.
Okay, Mr. Hungerford was going to
Okay,
speak on my behalf.
super. Do we see him anywhere? Mr. Hungerford, if you could turn your camera on and your mute off, please. How many people? I don't see.
I'm not sure the order of speaking for the delegates today, but I think Mr. Trgacheff was going to start.
And thank you for that. Mr. Trgacheff is trying to get a hold of his agent, who is going to speak on his behalf. So we've moved on to to you and Mr. Hungerford. If Mr. Hungerford.
So based on what Mr. Trgacheff has to offer, we may not have anything to reply to. I think Mr. Trgacheff is the one that had the concerns, so we need to wait to hear from himself and his delegate first.
What do we do? Put down the net list. Okay, thank you very much. We'll take a stab. Who's waving? Vlad? Oh, Mr. Trgacheff, were you waving? You're on mute again, by the way. Say Hollywood Square. You're on mute, sir.
Hello, sorry about that. It wouldn't unmute. Joe is in the, Joe's in the lobby. He can't come in. You have to let him in. Like he's, it's saying the host is going to be letting you in.
The Cameron Hughes, is that the name on the?
Is the name Cameron Hughes ring a bell? Is that the name he might be parked under? Is that the name of his firm?
Who's? Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Joe? Is it?
Do we get more?
Okay. Mr. Is he where? Okay. This is Mr. Cameron. Is that who it is? Are you there, sir? There we come. Yes, sir. Okay, welcome. We have a 2-minute slot for you, and you can start anytime you're ready. You're on mute, by the way.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Okay, thank you, council members. Thank you for your patience. So my name is Joe Murray, and my address is 280 Manitoba Street, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L1S5, and I am a counsel for Vlad Trgacheff. We don't have any issue, council members, with the Grech application for consent to sever their property. Don't have an issue with the zoning bylaw amendment to permit a dock as an accessory use to the property. And we support, Riverstone's position in the staff report recommendation that the dock, any dock that would be constructed on the retained or severed lands, be 30 feet by 8 feet. What my submissions relate to the side yard setback or any dock that is constructed. And I don't know if council members have the sketch that was prepared by my client relating to the potential location of the boundary, the potential relocation of the boundary relating to encroachments connected to my client's property. Do the council members have that sketch?
I don't believe so. No, none of us have.
Okay. So essentially, with respect to my, okay, yes, that is the sketch there. I don't know if you see that, but essentially there are encroachments onto my client's property, and one of the potential resolutions to these encroachments is a relocation of the boundary to the west of my client's, the boundary with the Grech's property. Okay, so there is, you'll see there the potential property line number 1 and the potential property line number 2, and you'll see on the sketch there the encroachments onto my client's property by the Grech's. There's a building, driveway, deck, etc. So my client's position in our submission is that 100-foot side yard setback is reasonable in the circumstances, because if the property boundary is located to the west, and given the size of the lake being a small lake and the size of the lots being large lots, that it's reasonable to impose 100-foot side yard setback, primarily for privacy purposes. You'll see there on the property line number 1, the potential property line number 1, my client, and you'll see off to the left there, he is proposing a 2-story dwelling that's to be constructed on his property.
Mr. Murray, you're almost out of time. If you could wrap
So
up.
if the dock is constructed 30 feet to the east of that property line number 1, be very close to his dwelling, okay? And given the size of the lake being under 20 acres, given the size of the properties that are large, they have over 300 foot of frontage. The retained lands has close to 500 feet of frontage. Our submission is that 100-foot setback from any property boundary is reasonable in the circumstances. My client is not opposed to a 100-foot. Sorry, my client is not opposed to a 30-foot side yard setback for the severed property, if council deemed it appropriate to just reserve the 100-foot setback for the retained lands.
Thank you very much, sir. Your time has run, but thank you.
Thank you for.
All right. So I think we were going to have Mr. Hungerford, if I'm not mistaken, speak to that issue.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead,
Good.
sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. It was interesting to hear the neighbor's agent's concern. I guess my point to council would be that this bylaw and the 30-foot setback that has been recommended by staff and validated through the Riverstone evaluation applies only to the lands that are being rezoned right now. So if I'm not mistaken, the 30-foot setback would be from the existing lot line between our client's property and the neighbor's property. The submissions that were made to council are really in respect of a future property settlement that has not yet occurred and is still being negotiated and subject to litigation. So again, I would reiterate the bylaw that's before council and the 30-foot setback that is recommended applies to the lands that are currently being rezoned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, and while we have the delegates here, does anybody have any questions to go back, specifically questions to either of these? All right, I'm seeing none. Thank you very much. That brings this particular.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. That brings us, I think, to the end of the Grech issue. Is that right? Everybody's spoken. What do we do with this one? Okay, it's going to come back up and we're going to have a discussion about it and deal with it a little bit later on in the agenda. But for now, we're going to move on, and I'm going to ask if Ryan Allen is in the waiting room. If you could bring him in, that would be terrific. Mr. Allen, if you could turn your camera on, please. There you come. And you're on mute. If you could take yourself off mute, we would welcome you to the meeting and remind you that you have 2 minutes as soon as you.
Oh, there
There
we
we
go.
We
Thank
can
you.
hear you.
The host has blocked my unmuting.
Ah,
Thank you, Mayor Kelley and Council. As you may be aware, I've been assisting Mr. Dunford and his proposed severance and zoning bylaw amendment applications to permit the creation of one new lot on Lake Rosso. I've submitted a detailed letter to Council that is attached to today's agenda. Mr. Dunford is pleased and greatly appreciates the Planning Committee has recommended approval of the applications at the April meeting. However, we object to the required consent agreement as a condition of severance and the application of the holding provision to the zoning bylaw amendment. Firstly, and possibly most importantly, Council should be aware that the correspondence that was sent by Mr. Gross and Ms. Poirier was not received by us prior to the public meeting, and we were blindsided by the additional requests and were not provided an opportunity to disagree or agree with the suggested requirements. Accordingly, we request that the applications be approved in accordance with the recommendations of the staff report to the Planning Committee in April. In my opinion, the applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement, conform with the township and district official plans, and represent good planning without the added requirements. I would also note that staff have not recommended a consent agreement or holding provision with this application. I provided detailed responses to each of the added requirements in my letter, but generally speaking, I believe that the requirements of the consent agreement and the holding provision are unnecessary, they're redundant, and they're inappropriate. Consent agreements, in my opinion, should not be used to control zoning or building requirements or use. There's no need to duplicate requirements in a consent agreement that are covered in existing bylaws. In my view, no greater protection is provided and only future complications will result if bylaws are changed, amended, or adjusted. The existing municipal bylaws provide adequate protection. A building permit will be required for a new septic system on the severed lot before development can occur, and no pool is proposed. There's no need for the requirements to be included in a holding provision on the severed lot, and they should be excluded from this amendment.
Mr. Allen, you just wrap up, please. You're almost out of time.
Well, last paragraph, thank you. Lastly, the township has not provided or required any previous such consent agreements or holding provisions for previous severance applications. And if such requirements are to be applied to this requirement, it would be expected that every future application be subject to the same requirements. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask if anyone has questions for Mr. Allen while he's here. So, Councillor Kent.
Thank you. And through you, question. I was under the understanding that since there is going to be no pool on the new lot, isn't the provision request for the drainage issue for the pool water discharge plan for the existing pool? Maybe I was misunderstood that. I'm right. Okay, so he's saying that since there's no pool on the new lot, we don't need to do the pool water discharge. I believe the pool water discharge.
Can I just interrupt for one?
You're not hearing the question now, Ryan?
Are you not hearing the question?
I am hearing the question now. I muted myself, but I was having trouble unmuting again. I was blocked.
Okay, sorry.
I just want to clarify from your letter that the pool water discharge plan is for the existing pool, not for a proposed new pool. Your letter says there is no plan for a new pool, so therefore we don't need a pool water discharge plan.
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor Kelley. I was equally confused by the required condition. The existing pool is on the retained lot. Mr. Gross and Ms. Poirier asked for the pool water discharge plan to be required on the severed lot. There is no existing pool or proposed pool on the severed lot, so this required condition is confusing.
Thank you, sir. Anyone with another question for Mr. Allen while he's here? All right, thank you very much. We're going to go to Ms. Poirier in 1 second. And for you, Mr. Allen, we're going to get to this resolution a little bit later in the meeting. I believe it's item 9B2. But we heard you loud and clear on your points.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask Marie Poirier. Ms. Poirier, you're still on mute. If you could unmute, and you have 2 minutes as well. There you go.
There, very good. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm not intending to create a ping pong game here, and I'm not going to comment on Planscape's letter other than to disagree with their allegations of inappropriate consideration by Planning Committee and the fact that we did send him our list of conditions on April the 12th. I want to focus on the planning merit of the conditions. Planning Committee and Council can impose any conditions it deems appropriate to ensure good and orderly development of lands created by a severance, and furthermore, to any extent it deems required to do so. Muskoka Lakes has often taken a belts and suspenders approach. It is your right, it's not illegal, it's not bad planning, and it's irrelevant whether or not for consistency and conformity with policy are achieved by a lesser degree of a condition requirement. With respect to the consent agreement reference to the site alteration and tree planting bylaw, the Township of Muskoka Lakes update these bylaws last September, and you are serious about maintaining natural features and vegetation on waterfront properties. Their inclusion in this development agreement as proposed is an added layer to ensure that any potential buyers of the severed lot are aware of this via a title search. Boat slips in boathouses. Boat slips, although that does not stated in the zoning bylaw, I truly believe they are intended to be in a boathouse. Otherwise, they would just be houses on the water, which is the case in the lot on the opposite Dunford property. The architect refers to it as a water pavilion. If they don't have slips for boat in them, then they're not boathouses, they're just houses. It is certainly appropriate to limit the use in a development agreement. In summary, Council is perfectly entitled to impose the conditions set out in the decision. The purpose of the conditions, especially when seeking exceptions to a zoning bylaw provisions in order to create a lot, is to ensure good planning. I would respectfully request that Council accept the recommendations of Planning Committee as they include these decisions to ensure good and orderly development of the lot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Poirier while she's on? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. We'll get to this matter a little bit later in the agenda, but your points are well understood. And I'm going to move on now to the last of the public comment, and that is Ali Brown. Is Ms. Brown on hold? Perfect. There we are. Welcome. You're already off mute, so we've got that part solved.
My
If
turn.
You want to go? Yeah, you go ahead,
I'm
Ms.
good?
Brown. You've got 2 minutes.
Perfect. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Ali Brown, and I'm here representing our Muskoka and myself as a property owner in the township. I hope you all had a chance to read my letter submission ahead of this meeting with the accompanying signatures that were collected in support of our full submission. First, we are not in full disagreement with the AMPS bylaw. We just believe you should start with a few less complicated bylaws initially, as some of the bylaws listed, specifically the tree conservation and site alteration bylaws, are new. Start small with the parking, dog control, and noise bylaws, and see what is working and what needs adjustments before implementing it across all bylaws. Second, our concern with the screening officer and hearing officer is that they are both being appointed through the township with the same prerequisites for hiring. Setting the policies and being the jury without third-party tribunal is a risk to the freedoms and rights of your constituents. Lastly, obviously no one wants a fine, especially one that can add up substantially and be placed on property tax bills. If the rules and penalty system under AMP's bylaw is black and white, then there is no discretion for honest mistakes. We are all humans, but automatically adding charges to tax bills doesn't allow for discretion. Site alteration and tree conservation are often bylaws that require discretion. The court system allows for some discretion in this regard, but it is doubtful that the screening or hearing officers, especially Township of Muskoka Lakes employees, are able to exercise fair judgment. This is problematic. So is that the township can choose the court route in a situation, but the constituent can't. Thank you for your efforts in guiding and protecting this township. I look forward to hearing how your discussion goes today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Brown? I see none, so thank you very much, and we will get to this matter a little bit later, and your comments will certainly be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to just take 2 seconds and confer with the clerk because on the consent agenda, we may have one issue to deal with. Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Kelley, I'm just going to give a little bit of process here. So just so everyone is aware, 2 of the delegations that we heard in regards to Dunford, that item is contained in the April 13th Planning Committee minutes as action item 1. So should anyone want to discuss that, they shouldn't wait until the bylaw. If there's something that you want to do, I would suggest that you propose an amendment to remove that item if you would like to. So just to put that forward, not to wait till the bylaw section because that item is actually contained within the minutes. So if you want to do that, now's the time to do so. Thank you.
You have a question, Mr. Burry? Or Councillor Burry?
Councillor Burry is looking for clarification. So if we want to reopen it and discuss it, we have to say something now.
If you would like to open it and discuss it after the mayor reads this resolution, which is the consent agenda, you need to put a motion on the floor to amend it to remove that action item.
Okay. In other words, I don't need to do anything.
Not right now. Okay, so we'll just do this in the normal course then. Okay, I'm going to. Just want to make sure if you have a question, yeah. You need to turn your microphone on because everyone else might have the same question.
I just wanted to clarify that the water wastewater plan for the pool is for the existing pool. And if the existing resolution doesn't say that, or the existing approval last time didn't say that, it's worth clarifying because I think they were confused. That was clear from his letter. That was clear.
So from a process standpoint, at this point, it's the consent agenda items that are on the floor. Once that motion is read, if you do want to have any further discussion on that, then you need to put a motion on the floor to amend this motion to remove it so that we can bring that matter up for further discussion.
I just have to pull up the resolution then from before.
Okay, we're going to move on to approve the consent agenda. I have a resolution right here in front of me. I still sense confusion, but we'll read the resolution and we can have a discussion. Moved by Councillor Bosamore, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that the mayor and council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the May 10, 2023 consent agenda and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Number 1, April 12, 2023 General Finance Committee minutes and action items 1, 2, 4 through 5, 4 and 5, sorry, and 7. Number 2, April 12, 2023 council minutes. Number 3, April 13, 2023 Planning Committee minutes and action items 1 through 10. And number 4, April 14, 2023 Special Planning Committee minutes. Anybody have any discussion on that? Questions or discussion? Seeing none, then I will call a vote. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Just sign this before. Okay, we will move down to, I don't believe there's any other items of business, but number 8, senior management team reports. Story, can we have no conversations if you don't mind? Senior management team reports, RFPs and tenders. And the first one, number A, is from the chief building official regarding building division budget amendments.
Is David there?
We come back. Come through here. No problem. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm here just to present building. Is the mic not on? Sounds like it to me. Sorry, I'll start again. Your Worship and Council, I'm here to present Building Report 2023-01, which provides an overview of 2 required building division budget amendments. Item 1 addresses the purchase of a compact vehicle or compact pickup for the newly created full-time sewage maintenance inspection program position. And item 2 is the reconciliation of GIS project. Both of these items will come from the building reserve and have no effect on the tax levy. I stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Oh, you're ready to vote. All right, then I'll read a resolution. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the 2023 capital budget be amended to add a building inspection vehicle in the amount of $45,080 to be drawn from the building permit fees reserve fund. And that the 2023 operating budget be amended to increase the operating expense line of professional fees and honoraria in the amount of $50,000 for a GIS contract position for the remainder of 2023, and to increase revenue line of the revenue line of license permits and rentals in the amount of $50,000 sourced from building permit fees. Anybody have any questions? No comments? All in favor? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next up is Director Becking. And this is re-participation in the District Municipality of Muskoka Contract 311-36-A-23 hot mix paving.
Thank you, Worship. The district and the area municipalities jointly tendered for the annual hot mix paving requirements collectively. The staff recommendation is that we be permitted to participate formally in the contract to meet our needs for the year, and that further some adjustments be made to the various project budgets in order to bring the annual program in on budget.
Thank you very much. Anyone with any questions for Director Becking? Oh, Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Of course, I'm going to ask the question about East Bay and Torrance Road. And how did we save, or are we just not going to pave as much?
The proposal before you entails scaling back on the portion of Torrance Road between the east intersection with District Road 169 and the hill as it enters into the urban area, and defer that to 2024 construction season. That will free up sufficient funds to make up for the overages elsewhere in the program.
And sorry, second, I'm not sure, it's not listed here, but I was curious. I was thinking that somehow the Bala Falls Road project might have been part of this asphalt thing. Like, I'm trying to follow up the progress on that particular job. but will that be listed somewhere else somewhere?
Your worship, the Bala Falls Road restoration is part of the Bala Falls Bridge project that was approved by council. We are still operating under that contract, and the work will be done this year as part of the contract that was approved in 2022.
So it's just, in the past, we would have seen, for instance, the paving, because we're hearing now paving is going to happen in 169. I just wasn't sure if this was, we're going to pigtail off of that.
No, it's its own standalone contract, your worship.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can you read a resolution? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Zavitz, didn't see up there. Thank you. You're muted.
Okay, so I got nothing.
Me too. They,
There we go. Okay, is that good? You can hear me now?
I can hear you, Glenn, or Councillor Zavitz, but
No one else can.
yeah.
But somebody in the office has got the button.
I don't know. Let me call Susan.
We can hear you.
Oh, can you? Okay.
Oh, just now?
We can hear you now.
Everything's good.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you. I almost forget what I was going to say. By the way, that button is not a button out here that's being mismanaged. So anyway, just for that, what that's worth. I guess my concern is similar to Councilor Nishikawa. At no point would I want to see us reduce anything in poor little Torrance. Reducing this thing by some 165, less the increase of 80. Is there no other way we can make that up? I'd hate to think that there's a deficiency happening, seeing as how at budget we gave up resurrecting our dock at Sunset Bay for the Sunset Dock for another year for $200,000. So anyway, that's my thought. Is there no other way we can somehow realize a cost saving than to remove it from that road, which needs to be done?
Director Becking.
The short answer, your worship, is I don't believe so. The general tendency that we're seeing in all of our tenders is that prices are coming in excess of the budget allocation. I will defer to the Director of Finance, but it would seem to me at this point the only logical approach would be to further draw from reserves. I'll defer to him in terms of the appropriateness of that.
Councillor Zavitz, do you have you're still on mute again.
I do. Thank you. And I guess the thought would, thank you for that. I guess my thought would be if we were going to defer this, would we be deferring it till next year, or is this going to be like down the road on this road? Because this road needs it. It's not been done in a long, long time.
Director Becking.
I would concur with the councillor's assessment. The road is in need of attention. Staff were very selective in terms of picking the one that we felt could last one more year. It's certainly staff's recommendation that if it is deferred out of the 2023 program, it should be given priority for 2024.
Good, then I would support it. Thank you.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Well, thank you. And I guess along with that, I was going to ask staff, I'm trying to make this a question, but knowing that, for instance, we have a motel possibly coming to Torrance Road and some other construction. I kind of wondered, and it will be part of the conversation further on, another budget discussion of how some of those projects that we hope to move forward, knowing that some other construction that's going to be happening, if we've taken some of those things into consideration. I'm not thinking that you have an answer at the moment, but I think we should have a further discussion about it.
Director Becking.
I can say to council, your worship, that when staff prepare project outlines or project proposals, we do give consideration to not only what is the current situation in terms of growth and development, but what is the likely scenario over the life of the facility to be created. Evidence of that, we look at what is the longer term projection for traffic, as an example. Specifically as it relates to Torrance Road, a good chunk of it was a surface treated road. Surface treated road is only really good to about between 500 and 600 vehicles a day. Beyond that, the wear and tear becomes so great that it's necessary to go to hot mix. In the recommendation before you, staff are recommending that we go forward with a hot mix road as opposed to a surface treated road, for that very reason, that we're trying to consider what is the change going to be in terms of the traffic load, and making sure that the infrastructure that we are creating is commensurate with that future need.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, I'm going to read a resolution. I haven't read it right. Okay, it's a long one. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved, the council authorized the township to participate in the District of Muskoka's contract for hot mix paving in the amount of $1,316,309.61, taxes excluded. And that a reduction in scope of work for project number 23054, as described in report number PW-2023-029, be approved. And that staff be authorized to renegotiate contract costs with the successful contractor based on this revised scope. And that the 2023 capital budget be revised as follows. Number one, 23051 East Bay Road project be reduced by $15,000. 23054 Torrance Road East Junction project be reduced by $148,000. 23009 Torrance Road West Junction project be increased by $80,000. Number 4, 23043 Beaumaris Road project be increased by $68,000. And 5, 23045 Bayview Avenue project be increased by $15,000. And that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute all necessary documents. Any questions from the resolution? Any comment? All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Worship. The next matter relates to a purchase of a 3/4 ton truck. Staff are recommending a contract award to Grevetts in the amount of $71,900.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'll read a resolution. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that contract T-2023-29 be awarded to Grech GM for the bid price of $71,900, less the value of trade-in, taxes excluded. And that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Thank you very much. That carries. Okay, who's next? Director of Public Works, one more time.
The next one, Your Worship, relates to the purchase of some compact pickup trucks. The recommendation is to award to Grevetts the amount of $136,240 less trade-ins.
Okay, I'm going to read a resolution unless anyone has a quick question. Nobody has any questions. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that council award contract T-2023-16 to Grech GM for the bid price of $136,240, less the value of trade-ins, taxes excluded. And that the 2023 capital budget be revised to increase project number 23005, building vehicle, by $5,000 and decrease project number 23060, public works vehicle, by $5,000. And that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any questions, comments, all in favor? That carries. Thank you.
The next item, your worship, has to do with the purchase of 3 full-size half-ton pickups. Staff recommendation is to award to Grech GM for the bid price of $171,650.
Thank you, sir. Any questions on this one? I'll read a resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, who I don't see on the screen. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, who I do see on the screen, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that council award contract T-2023-15 to Grech GM for the bid price of $171,650, taxes excluded, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. That carries. Sort of a self-cheering issue.
Next, your worship, consistent with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan approved by council, requests for proposals were received for the conduct of an arenas feasibility study. 3 proposals were received. They were evaluated in accordance with the provisions within the RFP. The successful or the highest rated proponent was Lennox Architects Limited of Huntsville. And the staff recommendation is that the firm be so awarded the assignment in the amount of $99,316 plus HST.
Thank you for that. Anyone with questions of Director Becking? Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you and Director Becking. I was wondering if you could expand. I did note in the report, it was a fairly close evaluation in the criteria between the 3 different RFPs. And just because the name architect implies already a built form, could you kindly expand on, we identified in the rec plan the need for a feasibility study. The next part of that is to ensure comprehensive public engagement, as well as the entire feasibility study in advance of doing a built form. So I just would like to understand that this organization, this group, has that in-house capability, or has a clear understanding for us as to how to make sure that that part of this process is completed.
Certainly, all of the 3 proponents have experience in the conduct of feasibility studies. Feasibility studies are typically done of this nature, are typically done by architects, and the approach that's being advocated is intended to be used predominantly where you have a series of existing facilities, 1 or more existing facilities, and you're trying to gauge the best path forward in terms of looking at options relative to maintaining or upgrading the existing facility, as opposed to an alternative where you are looking at a new facility. This proponent demonstrated previous experience in doing precisely these kinds of analyses relative to arenas and recreation facilities. As the name implies, one of the options is to, in fact, create a new facility in lieu of, or facilities in lieu of, those that currently exist. So it is one of the alternatives. It needs to be scoped in general terms sufficiently in order to be able to define what that alternative looks like and what the implications of that alternative is, and to cost that alternative out so that it can then be compared against the other alternatives involving the existing facilities. With respect to the question of public engagement, again, the proponent that is being recommended to you has had experience doing identical kinds of studies for municipal clients in Ontario. And I would say that their experience is comparable to the other proponents that were put forward. So if that answers the question.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up? Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? I'll read a resolution then. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that the assignment for the completion of an arena's feasibility study be awarded to the firm of Lennox Architects of Huntsville, Ontario, in the amount of $99,316 plus HST, and that surplus funds of $14,500 from the Bala Arena Lighting Project, project number 23064, and $14,500 from the Port Carling Arena Lighting Project, project number 23120, be reallocated to the Arena Feasibility Study, project number 23118, to cover any overage in the latter project and to provide a contingency to cover any out-of-scope work. And that an agreement satisfactory to the Director of Public Works and the Township Solicitor be entered into with the consultant. And that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to sign any necessary documentation. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Thank you very much. That carries. Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship. You'll recall that our consultant on the Transportation Master Plan brought forward their preliminary findings last month, one of which was to develop a active transportation network throughout the township road system. I was asked at that time, was there any work that should be considered for inclusion in that program, even on a trial basis, in this year's Capital Works program? And at that time, I responded in the affirmative. You asked me then to go away and analyze the implications of inclusion of or expansion of the two projects that I identified in the current year's program to include active transportation lanes. The report before you provides you with my analysis of the implications and provides you with a recommendation that we move forward on a pilot project basis with these two locations for evaluation of the approach as being suitable candidates, and that we proceed accordingly. It will mean that there will need to be the addition of funds to both projects in the amount of approximately $200,000 in order to pay for the additional roadway width to be constructed.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone with any, Councillor Nishikawa?
So I'm just trying to speed things up for you.
That's good.
Sorry.
No, you are doing a job.
East Bay Road in particular. No, I'll speak about the section of Torrance Road between 169 and the cemetery, if I was to use that area, which is a teeny bit of East Bay Road. I've looked at this very closely, and historically we were looking at having at least, I'll say, the railroad side of the road brushed better, so it allowed pedestrians to walk a little clearer. And it hadn't been done for a number of years, but looking closer and also recognizing that there's a little more happening with some of the business owners in that area, and a new garage that we just approved at planning recently. I was lacking seeing the ability of creating that safe walkway without people being out on the road. I don't know that this proposal is going to meet that with the 200,000 at this point. So I'll just leave it at that for that particular section. I also didn't understand why we stopped at Whiting's Beach Road. So that was interesting to me, because knowing, you know, I'm that person that's on that road 6 times a day. The majority of the traffic and the pedestrian traffic that I have experienced is always between sort of Packers Bay, the marina. So Packers Bay Road at the marina, and following up. And the interesting thing is, once you get to Whiting's Beach Road, it's much clearer. Like there's a marsh there. It's a big, much more open area that you can actually see pedestrians and traffic and things. It's that other section that's not. So one of my concerns was, how do you brush that? Well, looking again this morning, I don't see the possibility of us getting too much further than what we've already created right now. I mean, the guys are doing a great job, but it's very much open than we've ever seen it, than I have for 30 years. So I'm trying to understand my value, like the dollar value of what is going into this. And I would not be in favor, for instance, of that. You mentioned those trees along from Whiting's up towards the urban area of Torrance. I don't see removing those trees as being that much of a benefit, honestly. And there's like very large trees that are, that's already a very easy area to navigate and see people while it's that other end that's not so great. You did mention to me this morning that that blasting was going to happen. And one of the rocks along that way have always been the challenging areas for drivers as well as pedestrians to navigate. That rock's gone. I think we're going to see a much greater road. And again, I'm not sure what we're going to gain from this project today. Now that I'm seeing that we might also be putting off another section of Torrance Road, I'm just wondering if we might just look at it a little differently. But I don't see the value today, because I think they've done a great job of widening it. And that was the biggest thing I wanted. I wasn't looking for, you know, an actual bike lane, that type of thing, because I never envisioned being able to get it both on both sides. Like it's just that wonky of a road. So it's not that of course I'd be supporting this if I could see more value, but I think we're doing a pretty good job as we go.
Okay, Your Worship. If you'll indulge me a little bit, I'll give you the rationale as to why we're recommending what we're recommending, and frankly, it'll then be up to council to decide whether there's value to that or not. Active transportation lanes are intended to be lanes that are dedicated for the use of pedestrians and cyclists. Predominantly cyclists, admittedly, but they can also be used by pedestrians. They are typically applied in locations where you have a moderate volume of vehicular traffic. So not the 169s, not the 118s, not the 400s, the 401s, et cetera, et cetera. Those are too high volume, but in that middle ground. In our world, in my world, they're referred to as collector roadways, where they serve to benefit both property access as well as the movement of traffic. And frankly, those are the most dangerous roads from a pedestrian cyclist perspective. So they're typically applied to roads like that. Second of all, they're typically applied in locations where you have significant generators and attractors for that kind of traffic. In the case of Torrance Road, you've got the restaurant, whatever, down at 169 and Torrance Road. You've got the general store. So those are attractors of traffic. In the middle, you've got Queens Walk, Sunset Park, the wharf. At the far end, and I acknowledge that I did consider, you know, should we go to Whiting's Beach? Should we go further? My recommendation is based on the fact that at Whiting's Beach, we've gone past the kids' summer camp, which would be a generator of this kind of traffic, as well as we've also got the Whiting's Beach and the wharf there. Beyond that, I'm not saying that there may not be some generators of traffic, but as a pilot project, I saw this as something that could be justified at least on a pilot basis. In the case of Beaumaris, you've got the marina and the golf course at one end. You have Milford Bay Community Center at the opposite end. The traffic volumes are somewhat higher on Torrance and East Bay than they are on Beaumaris, but they're in that 750, 850, 1,000, 1,200 vehicles a day. I think the other complication that we face with Torrance/East Bay Road is that it's also used by commercial operators for hauling gravel and sand and the like. So what the design of these lanes will do by marking them out, first of all, we create a refuge that is intended for the purpose of the bicycles and generally speaking, drivers will stay in their lane, quote unquote, on a 2-lane roadway. The other thing that we are proposing to do is to narrow in the lane a little bit. Now, I can go into the psychology and the physiology of it all, but the essence of it is by narrowing up the lane, you increase the perception of speed. The driver perceives that they're going faster than they are. And as a result of that, they have a tendency to slow down. And this is documented in the traffic engineering journals and the like. Suffice it to say, it will have a calming effect. So we've created a refuge for the pedestrians, so immediate improvement in safety for them. And we've also created a situation where we're trying to encourage the drivers to at least pay attention to the speed limit. Whether or not this ultimately ends up being successful or not is to be determined. And whether the cost and the benefit are commensurate with one another. But to that end, I think there's sufficient. Well, there's a justification to give it a try. The limits that I'm proposing are frankly the logical limits from an engineering perspective. That may not necessarily coincide with the political perspective, but that's your decision to make.
Go ahead with the follow-up. Yeah.
Thank you. It's not about a political decision at all. It's actual watching the use of the road, and the majority of the pedestrian traffic, whether there happen to be, and it's actually very few bikes, but the pedestrian traffic are generated on everything beyond Whiting's Beach Road. And it's interesting, even if those that know the road, it's the majority of cottagers are all closer to the marinas. So the East Bay Road, or excuse me, Ashforth Drive. And I will also say, if we're going to really get political, let's talk about how much money's down there. Just saying, that is where the traffic is, that walkable traffic is coming from that direction. And in fact, cutting up Hardy Lake Road, they are not necessarily there's the odd guy person that's just doing the whole thing. All I was suggesting was that I don't see the value on the section between Whiting's Beach Road and our cemetery. That's just where I'm at. And certainly not taking down those trees, because there's other things to consider. And I would say, like I talked with Susan a little bit yesterday about some other ideas and proposals that we should be bringing forward from an active transportation, but that's not at the conversation today. Again, my concern is 200,000 and what's the best value we're going to get out of it. I'm just not sure that we're there yet for that particular Torrance location.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have a question? I think actually Councillor Zavet's had his hand up first, so we'll go with him and then Councillor Mazan. Go ahead, Gwen.
Well, thank you, and through you, I'm in support of everything that the director has indicated. I mean, I live on the road, so but I know it, and I think as Councillor Nishikawa said as well. But I am in support of this. I think as a pilot project, as a test, anything that we can do to help the folks that walk along that road. A lot of people use it for exercise. They bike on it. I think Ken's Director Becking has nailed it down. I do understand what she's saying about what Councilor Nishikawa is saying about the trees, but as I read Ken's report, the trees would be saved in this report. Am I not correct in that? We would find a way to align the road with the trees so that the trees would likely, the trees would be saved. Am I right?
Through you, your worship. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, great. So I'm totally in alignment with this. I think we have to do it. It gets people from 169 up into our neck of the woods, and where you stop and start. I think you've pretty much nailed it down, and I'm in total support of this, as I know many are. Thank you.
Okay, let's have a question. Councillor Mazan, do you have a question or comment? I don't think I've read the resolution, have I? Oh,
I think you said that.
okay. And I'll read the resolution. Let me read the resolution. We'll get to comments. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved, the construction of a 1 meter wide paved shoulders for active transportation purposes on Beaumaris Road between Milford Bay Road and Tondern Island Road, as well as Torrance East Bay Road between District of Muskoka Road 169 and Whitings Beach Road be approved as a pilot project, and that the 2023 capital budget for the Beaumaris Road project number 23043, as well as the Torrance East Bay project number 23051, be increased by $202,000 each, and that funds to cover the cost of the additional work in each project be drawn from the Roads Reserve Fund. Okay, any questions or comments? Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you. This was one of those situations that came up last month and has created an opportunity in our area to address, I would say, a long-standing concern in the community, which has been safety and traffic calming measures to accommodate the very high traffic in the peak period of time on this portion of the road. And so as somebody who is trying to represent to the community who's there using it, and there seems to be a general support within the community for this idea. They like the idea of having lines on it. They had other ideas, and we've tried other ideas to try and slow down the cars that tend to go quite quickly on that road. And, from a pilot standpoint, I do feel like this actually is a really good way for us to test this model and see if this is an appropriate way for us to perhaps look at other areas in the township as well. And I think that could help us form some ideas as we develop a policy in the transportation master plan. So from a Beaumaris standpoint, I believe this is a really good and positive safety measure. If I could just say, I do believe there's one question, and when you ask me that, I just want clarification. The safety measure on that one corner on the road, I don't know exactly what that property is, but I think we've talked about it. Director Backing, there's a bit of an S turn, and that actually is a kind of determined as a blind corner, and it does create concern within the community. By widening it this way, that actually would also be a cheaper alternative than a total road reconfiguration. Is that correct? Or it would help address perhaps in that one particular location, the sightline concerns.
I have spoken to the councilor, your worship, members of council. It is an area that has been complaints have been brought to my attention. The alternatives, as I see it, is to realign the roadway, to increase the radius of the curve, that'll have the effect of pulling the road into the private property on the inside of the curve. And in order to address the sightline issue. That's a much more complex and a much more expensive proposition than what's being proposed here. What we're talking about is creating a space that is dedicated for the purposes of this class of vehicles or group of individuals, users. It's to create a refuge for them, basically. Is it an absolute refuge? No, it's not. You know, there's nothing that says that a vehicle can't trend over into that space, but by marking off the lines and telling the vehicles, the motor vehicles, that this is your space and here is the space for pedestrians and for bicyclists, we reduce the risk, in my view.
And
Thank you.
Could I just have one quick comment on that? It also goes to the other side of the conversation, which is I've heard from people driving vehicles, the concern that you often have people walking 4 or 5 deep as they're walking their dogs. They've come off the wharf, they're walking, and it's such a narrow road that pretty much takes up the entire road. So simply by putting the marcations in, it might help educate everybody to be sharing this road more effectively, and safely. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I've read the resolution. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No, that carries. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
You. So I'm fine with that, but I believe what we just approved is both roads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'm happy with it.
It'd be less confusing if the air conditioning was on. It's the air conditioning in here. All right, let's stay focused so we're not here till midnight. Mr. Sharp, you're on for the planning department here.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, members of council. By way of background, Committee of Adjustment has recently discussed the appropriateness of individual members conducting site visits to properties subject to an application being considered by its members. Committee passed a resolution in April recommending to council that its procedural bylaw be amended to prohibit site visits by its members. This amendment will ensure clarity of process going forward. It will increase transparency and accountability and will reduce risks to the municipality associated with health and safety concerns and liability. Importantly, the draft bylaw before council today includes permission to undertake site visits related to fence disputes under the Line Fences Act. I have no further comments at this time, and I'd be happy to assist council with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Nishikawa and then Councillor Kent.
Well, thank you. This kind of bothered me, and it's just not you, Bryce. I'm just saying. Often, like it drives me crazy when we're looking at a flat piece of something and we really don't understand the geography of a location. And I, as one of those person that have always done site visits, and certainly when council was the Committee of Adjustment, we could do that. But I do find it frustrating though, when I realize that those that are making decisions don't really know the area. I just find that very frustrating because you don't know the area by a flat piece of paper. It's my concern.
Was that so, Director Bryce? See, it's too hot in here. We need. Don't turn. Sorry, Mr. Pink. Sorry, I had to learn about that. There is an issue, I think, with the sort of quasi-judicial nature of the role, and maybe it would be helpful to hear about that if you could. please.
Sure, yeah. So Committee of Adjustment is a unique body in the sense that it is a quasi judicial body. So it acts very much similar to a court. And the intent of that is that when there's a hearing held by Committee of Adjustment, it's a public hearing, that all members receive all of the information at once. So there becomes an issue, I would say, of transparency. If one member is going to a property to undertake a site visit, maybe getting a different perspective or information than other members that haven't. So staff have always prided themselves on, attending each property, taking great photos, including great descriptions in our reports of each property and what's proposed. And as you know, if there's ever further information or clarity required, we can always adjourn an application and, take more photos, this day and age, even video if required. So those are the options that we have available to us.
Thank you. And Councillor Kent.
For my ignorance, thank you. Is that the same policy we have for our planning committee? Which just as a matter of, are we not allowed? I never occurred to me because there's not a lot of time between the time we get the material and the Thursday to go, but I might want to go in the future. And I was wondering if it's the same policy.
All right, we'll go back to Bryce. Mr. Sharp, if you could answer that. Is that the same policy?
If I may refer to Mr. Pink for some assistance here. I'm largely familiar with the Committee of Adjustment. In my experience, it's been fairly rare for members of Planning Committee to do site visits. I could be mistaken, but actually now that I'm thinking of it on my feed, essentially Planning Committee is council. And I think council can undertake site visits, but perhaps I'd look to Mr. Pink.
Well, Director Pink has joined us. Welcome, Director Pink.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council. Yes, I think as Mr. Sharp pointed out, the Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body, so there are implications for doing site visits. The same liability concerns don't relate to council. I'm not an expert per se. I don't know if Director Donaldson or Lehman are there, but I believe you are covered by insurance should you go out to properties. But with that said, I think the other thing to note as well is keep in mind these are formal site visits where you would need permission by the property owner to enter onto properties. What councillors or members of Committee of Adjustment can do in answer to Councillor Nishikawa's questions, nothing prevents committee members from driving by the area or boating by the area to get a feel for the land, the character of the area and the neighborhood. Should they desire, we certainly couldn't prohibit or restrict that. But it is, again, that permission to enter onto a property and yet not speak to the owner, which raises some serious considerations for Committee of Adjustment, which would not be applicable to council members. You are permitted to speak to applicants, and I suspect you likely do in instances. So hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, have I read this? No, it's too short. This is the shortest one I've ever seen. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-050, being a bylaw to amend Committee of Adjustment Procedural By-law 2015-54, be approved. Questions, comments, all in favor? That carries. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Chief Morrell, you're up next, sir.
Thank you, through you to council. Good afternoon, council. In front of you are, I believe, 4 reports from our department. The first report is award of contract fire pumper apparatus. Recommendation in this report is to award the contract to City View Specialty Vehicles in Mississauga for the total value of $537,000. I now stand for questions.
Anyone with any questions? Councillor Bosenworth.
Are these the same make of material or brands, Chrysler, Chev version, or and does that matter?
Through you, they are Freightliner front ends, so they are commercial front ends. But no, they're not the same brand that we have purchased in the past in terms of the assembly company.
Thank you. Other questions? I'll read a resolution. Anybody on the screen? No. Moved by Councillor Bosenworth, seconded by Councillor Zabitz. Be it resolved, the contract T-2023-31 be awarded to City View Specialty Vehicles in Mississauga, Ontario, in the amount of $537,000, taxes excluded. And that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Sorry. Yes, sir. You're on again. I just want to see what.
Through you to council, the second matter in front of you is an award of contract for SCBA and cylinders. Tenders have been issued and a single bid was received, which is not surprising. This contract asks for an award to M&L Safety, Supply and Fire and Safety in Ingleside, Ontario, in the amount of $135,780, taxes excluded. I now stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Councillor Bosenworth.
Is this the lack of other bids? Is that just the nature of the structure of the industry here in Canada? We only have one supplier.
Very good question. Through you, yes, there's actually only two suppliers that could have bid on this due to dealer arrangements. Anecdotally, in the past, we have seen some bids come from truck manufacturers as well, but usually only one bidder locks in the price with the dealer.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved, the contract T-2023-36 be awarded to M&L Supply, Fire and Safety in Ingleside, Ontario, in the amount of $135,780, taxes excluded, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any comment, question? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Chief Morale, you got one, you got two more, I think. Certainly one now. Yeah.
That's correct. Through you. The next one is an award of consulting assignment for a fire station location study. As council may recall, a recommendation was made through the fire master plan, then an assignment for the completion of a fire station location study occur. A tender has been sent out. There were two bids that were received. The recommendation in front of you is to award this contract to the firm of Emergency Management Group Incorporated out of Barrie, Ontario, in the amount of $43,225 plus HST. I now stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the chief? Not on this one. I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the assignment for the completion of a fire station location study be awarded to the firm of Emergency Management Group Incorporated of Barrie, Ontario, in the amount of $43,225 plus HST, and that the 2023 capital budget be amended as follows: 98035- self-contained breathing apparatus project be reduced by $13,300, and 23090- fire station location study project be increased by $13,300. And that an agreement be prepared to the satisfaction of the fire chief and the township solicitor, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any necessary documentation. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That's great. Thank you. One more, sir.
Through you, award of contract is the next matter at hand. This is for Wildland 7, which is essentially an ATV with tracks. The recommendation is to award this contract to Northgate Power Equipment, which I believe is a local vendor. I'm sorry that I didn't put it on here, in the amount of $43,294, taxes excluded. I now stand for questions.
Any questions? I'll read a resolution. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that contract T-2023-34 for the purchase of one new ATV with tracks be awarded to Northgate Power Equipment in the amount of $43,294, taxes excluded, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you very much today. Appreciate it. There we go. Does anybody need a break? Easy one. We, right, having offered and having had it accepted, let's take a 10-minute break, come back. What's that, 3?
Supplementary agenda.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. You know what? There was one more thing. We'll get it done and close the book on the supplementary agenda. How do you want me to read it? Or is there any introduction or anybody? Oh, here we go. Director Becking, you're back. You said it.
Microphone isn't on.
Hello. There we go. We had an agreement in place for the maintenance and management of the wharf in Windermere with the hotel. The hotel having been sold, that agreement is no longer valid, and it's necessary to execute a new agreement with the Windermere House Muskoka Limited Partnership. Staff recommendation is that a bylaw be passed to affect that change, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement.
Thank you for that. Anyone with any questions? No. Councillor Edwards.
Well, excuse me, not through the mayor. Will the Windermere House, looking after this, move the cleats that we'd asked for last year from the swimming area where they were putting their?
We'll take care of that, your worship.
It's got to be on the other side. It's dangerous. Other than that, I would support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that a bylaw to authorize execution of an agreement between the Township and Windermere House Muskoka Limited Partnership for the management of the Windermere Wharf be given 3 readings. Questions, comments, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. So we got the brunt of it done. We're down to the bylaws. We will take a break. And I believe Councillor Roberts, you have to take a leave. Is that correct? Well, thank you for your participation today. And we'll come back at 5 after 4. Thanks. Okay, welcome back. Next item on the agenda is bylaw to collect and levy and collect taxes. I don't know, is somebody going to introduce this, or because it's pretty self-explanatory? Just read it? No, I think I've got it right here. You're handing me a different one. Yeah. I'm just going to read this one. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-045. Sorry, I should say that it was moved by Councillor Burry and seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-045, being a bylaw to levy and collect taxes for municipal purposes for the year 2023, and to establish due dates for the payments and to charge interest and penalties for non-payment of same, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. Anybody, any questions, comments? All in favor? Thank you. Next issue is the AMPS issue. I will read the resolution and then we'll come back because I think at least one of you has a question or comment. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-048, being a bylaw to implement an administrative monetary penalty system in the Township of Muskoka Lakes, and bylaw 2023-049, being a bylaw to delegate the power to appoint screening officers and hearing officers to adjudicate reviews and appeals of administrative penalties, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. That's the resolution, and I believe there was a question. And Councillor Mazin, you may start.
Thank you, and through you. I just wanted to note that we have received some communication from the public, just expressing some concerns about the program. And I think what I would like to know from staff is what they planned, and perhaps Director Pink, if you're on the call, just what is the plan or the process that we can follow to evaluate? Like any new program or initiative that we try, there's always got to be an opportunity of checkpoints along the way to make sure we've got it right. We can amend, we can change, we can update. If you could just walk us through what that process might look like.
Thank you for that. We have both Mr. Kennedy and Director Pink, and I don't know who wants to go. David, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. I think I can just briefly add that staff, I think, are constantly evaluating the bylaws for their effectiveness. They go to trial on those bylaws, and they're aware of what works well and what are challenges. I'm sure council members also regularly receive comments, and through our semi-annual reporting, you may recall the bylaw enforcement handbook that was approved by council. Bylaw enforcement staff should report on a semi or biannual basis to council, and through those opportunities, staff can certainly be directed to evaluate bylaws at really any time, and they're a bit more efficient than perhaps the planning bylaws that you are familiar with that are before you, that are passed under the Planning Act. Under the Municipal Act, we can quite efficiently review bylaws and make changes as we deem necessary. So there is that, again, regular evaluation process to see how bylaws are functioning. Those returning councillors might also recall bylaw enforcement staff provided a presentation on the bylaw review process, and we created a priority list of bylaws to be reviewed. So it's through opportunities such as that that can be brought forward, and bylaw staff will bring those reviews forward. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question? Councillor Bosenworth, and then Councillor Zavitz after that.
Yes, and again, this has to do with some of the feedback we heard ahead of this meeting from the constituents, and one of the points they pointed out was that in the document we haven't distinguished the qualifications between the hearing officer and the adjudicator. And yet when you go to other municipalities and when they're advertising for these situations, there's a long list of requirements for the hearing officer, including something called a preference for something being a member of the Society of Ontario Adjudicators and Regulators. And I was just wondering, how do we answer the constituents' questions, that we haven't addressed that in the bylaw. And I want to allay their fears that that the qualifications for the hearing officers need to be of a fairly high standard.
Director Pink, was that directed to Director Pink?
Who's ever best to answer it?
Okay.
Through the chair, I can answer that. With respect to hearing officers have to have some sort of legal background. Whether council wishes to add on to something for requirement in hearing officers, you may choose to do so. But the legislation in both the Ontario regulation and through the Municipal Act, it does state that the hearing officers have to be outside of the township, as in not an employee of the township, and do have to have some sort of legal background. So aka it could be a paralegal, a lawyer, it could be a retired lawyer that has their practice still ongoing, or that they just have that background of administrative law and adjudicating law. But again, council can add on to that if they wish to do so, but be wary, there are some limitations based on the regulation for that.
Thank you. Councilor Bosenworth, a follow-up?
Just a quick follow-up. So I like that answer. And I think what I heard was that there's more to this than is written in our bylaw, and there is regulations at the Ontario level to ensure that these people are independent and removed. And I think that's a satisfactory answer for our constituents. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councilor Zabitz, I think you were next, and then Councilor McIntyre, and then Councilor Kent.
Good, and thank you. Through you, I guess speaking to what, again, as the others have, to the public input, one of the emails that we as a council received, there were 3 concerns by the one gentleman. So I guess we've already addressed the screening officer versus the hearing officer in terms of criteria for those. So I think I'm satisfied with that. Hopefully that person would be. His point number 2, that staff can at their discretion decide to use the courts in a situation, but the constituent is not afforded the same right. Could you clarify that for me, and I guess for him?
Through the chair, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I'm not aware of any letter that came in from said person. I have one letter that was sent to us.
Fair enough. And so, yeah, and we would have been privy to it, perhaps not you and others. Staff can at their discretion decide to use the courts in a situation, but the constituent is not afforded the same right. We should be allowed at our discretion as well to go the court system route. So essentially what they're saying is, can the public elect to go directly to court instead of staying inside the AMP system? I guess that's his question.
Okay. Through the chair, simply no. The person that is alleged to contravene a bylaw or commit an offense doesn't have the ability to choose how they get charged. If we decide to go through a administrative monetary penalty, they can go through the screening officer and go through the hearing officer. At that point, the bylaw is done. They have no other appeal right through the township and through the AMP system. If they wish to go forward to Superior Court of Ontario, they are more than welcome to do that, but that would be at their own behest.
Right. Okay, makes sense.
Thank you. I forget who was next. Councilor McIntyre, you were next, and then Councilor Kent.
Can I just clarify procedure here? I have a couple of questions about specific provisions here. Should I do that now, or should I wait till the comment section?
I would ask those now because you've got the resources here to answer.
Okie dokie. So I'm looking at, there's just, when I read this over, I actually agree with one of the things that the woman who appeared here today said, or she said, this seems to be really harsh and there seems to be no discretion for human mistakes. And when I read this, I got the feeling that it was really quite harsh as well. But there were 2 sections that kind of concerned me. If I look at section 512C, it says, on review, administrative penalty, screening officer may extend the time for payment and do all this other stuff in any of the following circumstances: a defective form or substance on the penalty notice, service of a penalty notice did not occur, or undue financial hardship. My concern is the first two sections that I read, those are things that would normally have these things thrown out. I mean, it's a fundamental principle of our law, which says a person has the right to know the case that they have to meet. Now, if you've got a penalty notice that's defective, or if you haven't even received the penalty notice, either of those, I would have thought those cases should be thrown out. And traditionally, that's what happens. So I have concerns with that section. The other section, I have I can just go ahead. The other one is 6.7. The director may grant an extension to extend the time to request a review by the hearing officer only where the person demonstrates to the satisfaction of the director in their sole discretion that they were not served in accordance with section 7. So if I receive a notice, get run over by a truck, and am in traction in a hospital, and I say, please, please extend the time, they can't. And I'm not quite sure why that section is so harsh. So those are my two questions.
I'm going to turn to Mr. Kennedy. I think you probably can answer that as well as anyone.
Okay, through the chair for the first question on 5.12C. In the court system, Councillor McIntyre is right in some respects, but there are some additional things within the court system where they call them critical mistakes on tickets. One is being could be the date, misinformation on a birth date, things like that, where it's called a critical mistake. Or another example is no signature on the ticket. Those critical mistakes are where you would see those situations quashed immediately. If there is a mistake because there's a spelling error on the name or a spelling error on a street, those are able to be amended through the court system. So if someone challenged that and that was their only basis on a Part 1 ticket, all it would take would be that there would be a motion to amend the ticket so that it reflects what it actually needs to be. And then it goes forward as normal. For the second question, 6.7, this situation is only going to apply when someone has gone through the screening officer's request, then they are given an amount of time to file for a request for the hearing officer. And if they fail to do that, then they would have to then apply to the director to give a reason of why they didn't actually apply in that certain time frame. And realistically, that section means you need to give us a good reason of why you couldn't get to us in the 21 days or 14 days or whatever it is. I don't know it off the top of my head right now, but that would be that situation. And if Councillor McIntyre is going to go with the hit by a truck situation, I'm sure that the director would most likely be granting that extension if that happened. I hope that answers the two questions.
Yeah, I will just, two comments. One is the critical mistake test is not outlined in 5.12. It doesn't say anything about that. It says any defective form or substance. The other thing I would say is this section specifically says only if they were not served. So I'm not sure that that agrees with what you're saying. I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ken, I think you were next, weren't you? Yeah.
Thank you. And through you, I have two very small questions for Mr. Kennedy. It was mentioned by Councillor Bosworth, you have a screening officer and you have a hearing officer. Both appear to be appointed by the township. Is the screening officer technically less qualified than the hearing officer? So one is a level up in the qualifications. Are they the same kind of people, just two different people with the same qualifications? And I think it would help, given some of the comments we received, particularly the letter that we all went through. And it was mentioned twice that that we clarify that neither of these people are employees of the township in any way, shape, or form. They're independent people that we hire, but the problem is you have to keep it hands. When you say they're appointed by the council, it looks like we hired them. We're going to hire somebody we like, or, you know, that somehow establish their independence from the township, which I think is important to the third party. So that's my first question, is level, and how do we clarify that they're independent? And then I'll go to the second question, if you want to address that one first.
Through the chair, I think you got to look at it as a regular provincial court system. We're almost mirroring that. So screening officers, if you will, think of them as the justice of the peace. So when a municipality has charged someone, whether it's an information or summons, or if someone has taken a parking ticket or a Part 1 ticket to trial, they sit in front of a justice of the peace. So think of that as the screening officer. They go through the process there. And if they don't like the justice of the peace's answer, that's where they can go to the Superior Court of Ontario on the appeal. In the AMPS bylaw, if they don't like the screening officer's decision, then they have an appeal right to go to the hearing officer. And then if they don't like the hearing officer's decision, then they can go outside of the bylaw and apply to the Superior Court of Ontario to appeal it further if they wish to do so. I have never seen something like that happen. In my research through AMPS and talking to other municipalities, that has never happened, but there is an ability to do that. So you almost have 3 steps of appeal through an AMP system, while you only have 2 steps of appeal through the provincial court system.
Right, but can I correct?
Go ahead.
Are they the same level people? Just
No,
call-
because when you go to the Superior Court, it's a judge. So the big difference between a screening officer and hearing officer is going to be the hearing officer is required to have a legal background. They have to have some sort of legal background, whether they're a paralegal, a lawyer, doesn't matter what type of law they practice, as long as they have a legal background, they would meet the requirements for a hearing officer. The screening officers at this time are members of the township, are employees of the township. And as I said in previous reports and presentations, that is one of the limitations for small municipalities. We don't have the luxury of being able to have a massive amount of staff to be able to have screening officers well outside of what the bylaw realm would be.
But the definitions both say that they're appointed by the council. And my concern is this independence issue that one of our constituents keeps mentioning. He's mentioned it twice, and I agree with him on it. Fine, if the screening officer is an employee of the township, we need to say that. And then we need to say that the hearing officer is appointed, but not an employee. I think it's a clarification that should be made, so that people understand it, and that they have different levels of qualifications. And whatever you said, the qualifications of the screening officer, the hearing officer should be in there, so that people understand they're getting 2 different people, not an employee of the township.
Through the chair, sorry, just to clarify, through the chair, all of what Councillor Kent just said is actually in the screening officer and hearing officer bylaw under the requirements for each.
Okay, I was just reading the definitions at the front. You're saying there's more in the back that I missed?
The other bylaw for screening officers and hearing officers sets out what's needed for each position. And the hearing officer cannot be an employee of the township, regardless if they have a legal background or not. They cannot be part of the township.
Okay.
They have to be an external body.
Okay, that helps. Second, the last question was pursuant to what Councilor Brown said. You talked about follow-up. What about early communication of this whole thing? I know it's obvious to all you people who've dealt with AMPS before, but to the common person out there, it's a change and it's different, and people seem to think it's going to be difficult. Are we planning a communication plan or a public meeting, or what's going on with this? Are we just turning on the switch one day and having things change?
Through the chair, I think we talked about this last month in regards to education, and the question was posed, do we ever educate anybody on the provincial court system? No. And I think this is in the same boat. The only people that would necessarily need to understand an AMP system would be the people that are given penalties through that system. And what we're planning on doing is similar to what other municipalities in the area are doing with their web pages regarding AMPs. I will use the town of Huntsville has a very, very good web page that has a lot of information of when you do get an AMP, where do you go and how is the process handled. And that would be something that we would like to mimic or mirror in this township.
I think the concern is primarily from the construction community, who are the people who are worried about big fines.
And okay. I think, thank you very much for that. Does anybody else have any other questions? Councillor Bosemore.
Yeah, just one question or really clarification. I believe with all enforcement activities, there is a judgment call on the enforcement officer about whether they should use this tool or not. And an example might be somebody isn't aware of the tree cutting bylaw and cuts down a tree that's slightly more than 1 inch big, and the bylaw officer is called, and you know, it's like getting a speeding ticket. You're 3 miles over. He makes a judgment call. Is that something? Is that how we will be enforcing, using enforcement of our, I guess, quality of life bylaws? That will be under the AMPS. I mean, I just don't want people getting slammed with a very, you know, a fairly significant fine if there was no malintent.
Through the chair, I think there's a little bit of confusion in regards to the discretion of an officer and the difference between some planning bylaws and regulatory bylaws through the bylaw department. Officers have discretion on which way they go. We can choose to not do anything. And to take Councillor Bosmer's example, in that situation, I'm most likely going to use that as an educational opportunity. We are not going to be out there issuing $2,000 penalties for something like that, where they've cut a single tree down. And you know, there's other options available to staff to be able to gain compliance in that respect. We have the ability to issue orders to remedy. If they cut a tree down, let's replace that tree. Here's an order to plant X number of trees to mitigate what happened. We still have the ability to issue Part 1 tickets if we wish to do so, and we still have the ability to issue the information and the summons to court. So there is a lot of discretion that we can use when it comes to these bylaws. It does not mean that every single time someone contravenes a bylaw that's subject to AMPS that we are going to be issuing that penalty. The bottom line is bylaws are out there to gain compliance, not to be punitive in nature.
Anybody with any other questions? Councillor Edwards.
I think the AMPS bylaw is good through the mayor, but some of the penalties and that, can they be adjusted after this is passed? Because I'm looking at just docking in boats and that, like park a boat between December 1st and March 31st. If you have a late freeze up, the contractors are using them. If they get a late delivery and they store materials, they could get a fine. And that, how is that handled? Because like I say, we're really putting it on the construction industry if we're fining them for getting material after 4 o'clock and they can't move it till the next morning, something like that. How is that handled?
Mr. Kennedy.
Through the chair, I think I just explained in regards to the discretion that we have. Like in those situations, we're going to be using our discretion. We're not, you know, if there's a late freeze and a contractor is using something and we get a complaint for it, we go and have a chat with them to make sure they understand the bylaw. But in that situation, frankly, an AMP would probably not ever be even considered, because remember that when we're issuing an administrative monetary penalty, the only real time we're going to be doing that is when we know that the person that we are going to issue that penalty to owns property within the township. Because if they don't, and they don't pay the AMP, then it virtually goes nowhere, and we can't collect it, because there's no way to retroactively collect that money if they don't own property in the township.
Council, did you have one, Councilor? Oh, Mr. Pink, sorry. Director Pink, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add on to that last question, I think it's also important to understand the distinction between the regulatory bylaw itself and AMPS. I think if you have a concern that a municipal bylaw allows, would subject an owner to a penalty that you don't think is warranted, review your bylaws and make those changes so that it's no longer illegal to, again, collect construction material after 4 p.m. or whatever the matter is. That's not an issue with AMPS. That's an issue with your dock bylaw or your parking bylaw or your noise bylaw, etc. I think, as Mr. Kennedy has very well put, there's an immense amount of discretion that comes with the role of a bylaw enforcement officer. And AMPS is just another variable or level, another tool that they can use when they're exercising that discretion, so that they can go from everything from education to summonings to court and now provide an AMPS. It does not mean that every violation will automatically go that route, far from it. But again, I think it's also important to note, if the concern is with the bylaw itself, that's not the AMPS issue. The AMPS is just the process. It's not creating the violation itself.
Thank you, Director Pink. Anyone else? Sorry, he's behind Ken's head. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Kennedy.
Sorry, just to back onto that, I think, and sorry, through the chair, if you take a look at the amount of files that we opened last year, I believe it was around the range of 320, 325. And then look at the amount of charges that we laid all throughout the year, part 1 and part 3 wise, I think we are around 30 different people charged. Take into consideration that a lot of times when we create the files, we aren't charging people. We're using these as educational opportunities or going the route of that order to remedy to rehabilitate a property that has maybe been altered or trees have been cut down.
Thank you for that. Is there any other questions or comments? Because I will say something if no one else has anything. I think we do need to have an educational process, and I think we need to have it for council, because quite frankly, we went through most of this stuff at committee, and some of the arguments are the same. The new AMPS program doesn't give anybody any more or any less right than they have today to find an offense and deal with it. They still have the same discretion. It's still the same diameter tree that got cut down. It's still the same time parked in front of the post office that's going to get ticketed. The difference is it's a system of, essentially a much cleaner system of assessing a penalty and a very strong or much stronger ability to collect a penalty, especially, as Mr. Kennedy suggested, if the recipient of the AMP is a resident. So when we talk about a much more consequential effort to enforce our bylaws, it doesn't create new bylaws, doesn't create new offenses, it doesn't get any more tickets, or we can't find more things wrong with what anybody's doing. We just have a different way of dealing with it. It's going to be new, and I was the one, I think, last time who said it's just like when you get a ticket with today under your windshield. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. It's written on the back in fine print. Don't have to go to our website to figure it out. It'll tell you right on there. This is how you manage a payment. I think it was Director Pink suggested, if the problem is that we're too aggressive or draconian in some of the bylaw offenses that we are charging and prosecuting, that's an issue with the bylaw. Nothing to do with AMPS, nothing to do with how we assess it, how we collect it. That's just a matter that, and it's an arguable matter that we're overstepping or overreaching. So I think education is paramount, but I think we need to make sure that we are all understanding the difference and what the differences are. We didn't invent AMPS. In fact, there are many other local municipalities already using it to their advantage. We're just trying to fit our own enforcement process into this system. It relieves all of the pressure on the courthouse down in Bracebridge and on Pine Street, and it gives us a system that's been created to collect these things and enforce the collection. I really don't want to be distracted by people thinking we are going to start charging too many things. There's no new things to charge. There's no lack of discretion that doesn't exist today. It's just a way of collecting, hopefully, a more consequential fine when we find a breach that we want to prosecute or want to go after. Councillor Kent.
They were in the prior structure? Approximately, is that whole schedule of first, second, and third offense levels the same? Okay, I wouldn't have known that.
I would have had to get a different answer. Mr. Kennedy, what are the fines? What happens to the fines under AMPS as opposed to under the current regime?
Sorry, can you clarify that? What do you mean by what happens to them?
Well, are going to be any higher? The consequences of a parking violation, any higher under this new program than they were before?
I believe for the most part, an AMP is a little bit higher than what a Part 1 is. I believe for like our tree conservation and site alteration bylaws, they have been set for the first offense at $2,000. If you recall, council, I believe it was the last council, were a little bit concerned that the provincial offenses system only allowed us to go up to $1,000 for a Part 1. So that is one of the reasons why we thought about introducing this system, is because we aren't bound by that $1,000 penalty. But council is free to change or amend any of the penalty amounts that have been proposed.
That's perfect. Thank you. Any more questions or comments? I have a resolution to read. Moved by, I'm sorry. Is he here? No, moved by Councillor Edwards.
You said you don't need notification. I don't get confused.
All right, moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-048, being a bylaw to implement an administrative monetary penalty system in the Township of Muskoka Lakes. I think I did read this. And bylaw 2023-049, being a bylaw to delegate the power to appoint screening officers and hearing officers to adjudicate reviews and appeals of administrative penalties, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. So, any questions? Any comments? Yeah, Councillor Nishikawa, Councillor McIntyre, Councillor Kent.
Sorry, there was a little bit of, I'm just going to say typographical kind of things that I picked up, but I will do that offline. I was a little bit concerned at the last meeting that a deferral was asked by it was Ali Brown actually that asked for the deferral, and that didn't happen. And so I'm still not clear. While I understand, I'm not clear that this committee fully understands and or the public understands what we might be passing today. So I'm looking towards you to tell me how that's going to be.
Oh, well, I'll take a big swing and probably a miss, but I mean, I would suggest that if we pass this today, we might start the next council meeting with something. Can we take it in camera for educational purposes and understand what we're doing, or is it something we do in public? I mean, we think we all need to go through it and understand it better. Well, that's fair. Okay. I forget who was next. Councillor Kent.
I think that would be fine. We could also, maybe you could put a brochure downstairs in that rack of all the fire safety things, what the new AMP system is or something to either, and we could do a bulk drop. If you just want to, rather than doing a meeting, you could just provide it so that the contractors and people who haven't read or listened to the meetings can read whatever they want to read.
Okay. Did you, Councillor Masson, were you?
Simply coming back to my comment that I think, like anything, when we start something new, there will be a need for an appropriate evaluation period. I suspect that we will have things that we're amending or tweaking over time. In fact, we could throw this entire program out after a year if we decided that it wasn't working. So I would personally like to support this, knowing that I have that process, which is why I asked that question, to allow all of us to go through this experience and understand its effectiveness. So that's my comment.
Mr. Kennedy, go ahead. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, maybe for clarification and through the chair, if this is passed today, we're not going to start issuing penalty notices tomorrow. If council wishes to do so, I think it may be beneficial that we create maybe some draft or some example actual notices that would be going out to residents if they were charged. And we can show council what those would look like and what information would be on those. But yeah, like this would not just magically happen overnight. We still would have to go out and obtain a hearing officer. We have to still amend all of the bylaws that would be within AMPS as well. So that would have to come at a future council meeting, all those amendments. I think there would be 13 of them. So this is not going to be something that we're going to be doing now and immediately. It'll be something that we're going to definitely have to ease into and get everything in order on our end administratively before we actually start issuing the penalty notices.
Thank you. Councillor McIntyre.
I'm just going to reiterate basically, I think, what I said last time. There we go. Which is, these are really substantial fines. And I think we need to, as everybody else has said, I think people need to know that things have changed and that there's now a new procedure and there's now really hefty fines and we have to obey the law. And I think if I come at this as a person from the public and I read that all those pages of all those fines, there's a lot of them I didn't know about. Maybe if we did something on the website where we have, apps, find out what's happening, or, this is what's coming or whatever. We need to do something because it's big fines, big changes, and nobody knows that it's happening.
Thank you, Councillor Bosenworth.
I'll just make it clear that I support this bylaw as it stands. I don't think we should be spending any effort on communication to the public. Last year, only 30 people were impacted by fines. We have, and it's not that communication isn't important. It's just that we have another topic coming up where communication is going to be paramount. And I frankly don't want our staff spending any time on this one that might affect 30 people next year. And back to the point, the vast majority of people who have no idea what the fines are today, you only find out when you get an infraction. And then it'll be a bit of a rude awakening. And if you have a true hard-nosed infraction, then you deserve the fine. Most part, you're probably going to get an educational lesson and you'll know better the next time.
Thank you, Councillor Bosenworth, and Councillor McIntyre. You just turned your mic off for me. Thank you. Councillor Burry.
So I'm on the same page as Councillor Bosenworth. Let's be very clear. Only the penalty system's changing, not the bylaws. And when you get your first warning, I suspect it'll be a warning, you'll know if you're a chronic abuser, you get a big fine. But the big fines don't come in until you're a repeat offender. And a repeat offender to me is someone that is knowingly doing something against the law. We all got elected to uphold the environment, and that means tree cutting bylaws and other bylaws. I think that the Muskoka group are some of the most qualified contractors and service providers we have. I appreciated Ms. Brown's comments, but they're smart people. They're very good at what they do. They will not get caught by this, I don't believe, or certainly not intentionally. And we have good staff that can help people understand on a one-off basis. And as Councillor Bosenworth said, 30 infractions last year. But what this does do is give us some teeth when we get the bad actors. I'm thinking maybe an island somewhere in the middle of Lake Joseph. Pick one of them. And this is going to give us some teeth to be able to go after the bad actors. And I'm fully supportive of what staff's done. It's a good job.
Thank you. CAO backing. No, not backing. Hammond. They're all moving around on me.
Thanks, Your Worship. So there was a little bit of a joke about Mr. Becking and my likeness since I've grown the beard. So hence the comment from. Right. It isn't since my team's not in the playoffs, but that said, so to bring us back to the topic at hand, I did want to say that, I think it's important for council to remember that this is an administrative monetary penalty system. This is an alternative to the provincial offenses process, which we found clunky, not effective for us with respect to solutions where we have charged people based on breaches of bylaws. So I appreciate some members of council, your reticence with respect to the process because it's new. But I think the thing to remember here is it's the bylaws, like Councillor Burry has pointed out, the site alteration bylaw, the tree cutting bylaw, things like that. People know, I think, in the community not to offend those bylaws. And that's really the focus here. And you heard from the communications officer this morning. That is one of the projects that she has identified is clarifying development process and getting information about bylaws out there so that we don't have inappropriate development. This was a big issue last summer. So that's really the focus of what we need to be doing is looking at those bylaws and ensuring that people are aware of them and not to breach them. This is the consequence should there be a breach, a process to deal with the consequence. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I've read the resolution, I believe. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to follow through with 3 more of these bylaws. Then we're going to move into closed because one of our legal advisors on closed is only available for a while. And so we're going to accommodate and do closed first. Then we're going to have to come back and finish off with the zoning bylaws after that. Okay, just so that everybody knows. Next one, and read it even quicker than I have been. This is the community center programs. I think basically deals with extending insurance to the volunteer libraries. Be it resolved that, sorry, does anybody speak on this? No, just me. Be it resolved that, moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-051, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2019-062, being a bylaw to provide for community center programs and services, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Anybody have any questions? All in favor? That one was good, quick, thank you. All right, next one is Committee of Adjustment Procedural By-law. We talked about it earlier. Councillor Roberts is no longer with us. That sounds horrible. He's left the meeting. So we will, I will read it. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-050, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2015-54 as amended, governing the proceedings of the Committee of Adjustment in the Township of Muskoka Lakes, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any discussion on the Committee of Adjustment? All in favor? Thank you very much. One more, and then we're going to have a break to closed. Just this one. Okay, this one came off a supplementary. I'll read it and we'll know what it means. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved, the bylaw 2023-046, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute and affix a corporate seal to an agreement between the Township of Muskoka Lakes and Windermere House Muskoka Limited Partnership for the management of the Windermere Wharf and Maple Leaf Bay Dock for 3 one-year period operating seasons commencing in 2023 and ending in 2025, be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Comments? All in favor? Thank you very much. So that's it for bylaws. Now we need to have a resolution to close. Get something for me. Can I read all this? Okay. All right, this is going to move us into closed. If we could stay with us one more minute. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that pursuant to section 239 sub 2 of the Municipal Act 2001, council in closed session convene at, is that 450? Thank you. Like Big Ben back there at 4:50. And B, for the purposes of, what the heck is it, AB?
That's the section of the act.
Okay, section B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and D, labor relations or employee negotiations. Confidential report HR-2023-03, staffing adjustment for Development Services Division. B, subsection C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Confidential report PW-2023-30, property exchange. C, subsection E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And subsection F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Confidential update, Ontario Land Tribunal matters. Finally, D, subsection E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And subsection F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Confidential report CAO-2023-02, Colonization Road. Not reading it again. All in favor? Thank you. We'll move to close. Thank you. Yeah, while we get set up, probably. So we'll take 5 minutes while we're getting organized.